Everybody got so quiet. Are you still there? Okay. Well, thanks for showing up today to participate in this exploration with me. And I consider it increasingly an exploration of consciousness and how it works and how we interact in the world. And I would also like to make this as much interactively as possible. If you have questions, just ask the question, unmute yourself and ask the question, and we'll try to do it a little more dynamic in real time. I think we did that in some of the last sessions, and they seem to work with a little better flow to them. So we'll continue to do that. And one of the things Connie caught it real quick was, mastery of the queendom, free woman of the whole estate rather than mastery of the kingdom, and freeman of the whole estate. It's often, as I study this material and go over it again and again and go over my notes and look at the things that Audley taught us and look at the cultural experience that it was positioned in, and where it was very common to think of things as not, I guess gender neutral might be a way to say it, but gender neutral, meaning that it was, as long as it was represented with male terms, it was acceptable speech or language usage. And so when I catch myself, I try to change that and make it different or make it aware, so that it's from what I consider more inclusive, that everybody, no matter the gender or the, I guess, race or sexual persuasion or anything, no matter what we are as humans, we all have the same creative life force within us, and all of us can surrender to that, and we can all know it and live it and express it in a way that brings joy and happiness and freedom, liberation of consciousness. And it's not limited in any way to man, woman, child, someone in this world or another. It's all available for everybody right now. We are an expression of that divine. And so doing and looking at that expression, I like to as we've done before, try to start with some type of meditation. One of the things I would like to do today is actually add a little mantra in it, if I can get this pulled up here properly. To add it. And this mantra I'll talk a little more about, but I'd like to just meditate with this for a few moments. Still your consciousness to breathe and listen to the sound.
Satu samaya manupalaya benza sato teno pati tariro me bawa sutukayo me bawa supokayo me bawa anuratu me bawa sarva siri me prayata sarva karma sutsame sitam shiriya korohunga ho bhagave sarva data gata benza mame menza benzi bawa ma samaya satua. Benza satu samaya manupalaya benza sato teno padi taridro me bawa sutukayo me bawa supokayo me bawa anuratu me bawa sarva siri me prayata sarva karma sutsame sitam shiriya korohunga ho bhagave sarva data gata benza mame menza benzi bawa ma samaya satua. Benza satu samaya manupalaya benza Benzasato teno patitari drome bawa Sutokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anurato me bawa Sarva siddhi me preza Sarva karma sutsame Chittam shiriya kurunga Ho bhagave Sarva tathagata benza mame benza benzi bawa ma Samaya sattva Benzasato samaya manupavaya Benzasato teno patitari drome bawa Sutokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anurato me bawa Sarva siddhi me preza Sarva karma sutsame Chittam shiriya kuruhunga ho bhagave Sarva tathagata benza mame benza benzi bawa ma Samaya sattva Om benza.
And if you could just sit in the silence for a moment. Relax and go deeper into your own being, into your own awareness, and express gratitude toward the teaching, toward the teachers, and toward the path and the community that comes together to simply discuss these things or talk about them or share their own explorations and ventures into the inner worlds, to know the secret, know the meaning of life. What are you and why are you here? And help us, Divine Self, as we explore these things and these topics and these ideas and these concepts and this teaching. Help us to open our minds, to open our heart, so that we may understand the fullness of what the teaching is, and be able to listen to it properly, be able to share it with others. Help us to find the best way possible to share, to teach, to exchange the ideas in a way that lead the greatest number of people to liberation of consciousness. Help us all to know that we can, in this lifetime, there are many tools that we've been given that help us to unfold our awareness, unpack the baggage that we brought in our karma, to help us find that pathway to freedom, to superconscious meditation, to where you are aware of the oneness, the source of your being. And then slowly come back into your, we call it physical consciousness, but in your waking consciousness, where you probably are sitting in front of some type of screen or some type of device. The mantra that I just played a few repetitions of is called the Viraja Mantra. We'll talk quite a bit about that, and I've been fascinated as we studied mantra and explored some of that in the past 2 or 3 months. I came across this mantra and had seen it before, but it really had not caught my attention or not caught my awareness. And when we were looking at various types of mantra from various traditions, this is more of a Tibetan version of a mantra, but also there's a Sanskrit version, and the Tibetan is a pronunciation of that. So we'll look at those a little bit and see what it is. And you probably want to know how does this relate to the kingdom, and how does it relate to anything that Audley gave us or taught us, or various things. And as I was preparing this, I went back and looked at some of the things that Audley had given me over time. And one of them, at the time, I really didn't understand it fully. but didn't know what it was. But one day I was over at his house and we had meditated. And as we meditated for a while, we talked and then came back, and then he said, just a minute. And he went over to the wall, and above a table that he had where he often worked on students, it was kind of a medical table like a chiropractor might have or something like that. I think that's where he got it. But above that, he had a small picture on the wall that was actually a painting. It was a Tibetan painting of one of the Tibetan gurus or spiritual guides. And he took it down from the wall and said, at some point in his life, he was very interested in this teaching and stuff. And he had got this, and as he had shared it, I think in one of his trips to India, Sadhu, or one of the students that was with him at the time, actually purchased this and gave it to him because he was studying it. But it was a picture of the Guru Rinpoche, or it's often represented very similar, the Guru Vajrasattva, and that's what this mantra is about, that we've listened to. And there's lots of variations on it, and it's often called the 100-syllable mantra. And it's if you count the Sanskrit letters in it, it's actually 100 syllables in Sanskrit. And as you chant that mantra, it's, for me, very similar to the Gayatri or the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. They're longer mantras, but they have a number of syllables that actually impact or cause a response in all of the chakras or the centers. All of your chakras, the petals on the chakras actually produce a sound similar to what the sound of that symbol. And with the 100 symbols, it includes a version, the Sanskrit alphabet. It includes all of the symbols in the alphabet. And those, as you chant that, and as you chant it mentally, they actually activate or cleanse the centers in the body. And sometimes it's talked about being purified, purifying those centers and those energies, or removing negativity, removing karma. And there's lots of ways to do it. And there's techniques that we have also been taught, the techniques in the Kriya Yoga technique. Kriya Pranayam does a similar thing, and it reverses the flow of energy and helps that to be more positive and more balanced and better. Also, it claims to burn karma or burn impurities or negativities in the body, and help you move to that. And then in Kriya Yoga, just like in the Tibetan traditions of the Vajrayana techniques, it's often said that with sincere practice, in 2 or 3 years, a student can move from a state of complete unknowing into a state of realization or awareness. And Audley often discussed that and said, once you practice for a while, everything's cool. You get clarity in your mind, clarity in your consciousness, control of your desires, control of your thought processes, and then you can enjoy the kingdom to the fullness. Then you can basically go to whatever level that you want to go in your kingdom. It's just like you own a giant estate, or a giant farm or world or planet, or however you are experiencing your life. And in that life, you can go to all the levels, on all planes, all of existence. You can enjoy it, the fruits of it, the benefits of it. You can control it in the sense that you don't get lost in your own thoughts and in your own mind, your own ideas, your own opinions, your own fears. You can actually be free and enjoy it, and enjoy life to its fullest. And from my perspective, I think Audley was phenomenal at truly enjoying life and getting everyone around him to enjoy it. Whether or not he got you to drink alcohol, or got you to learn to dance, or got you helping and serving others, helping people become teachers, helping them become guides, helping them to take care of themselves, all those things. He was a perfect example of a self-sufficient, self-realized being. And he gave that awareness and that consciousness, that teaching, and he gave it to all of us that were his students. And many of the students have, packaged it as they understood it and explained it to others, and they continue to help people. And there's people I know all over the world that practice some version of the teaching that was handed down. Even some of the text and stuff, like the meditation book, I know that was translated into a number of languages as people in different countries asked for input and ask for guidance on how to meditate and things like that. And so a lot of the information has been put out there. But the picture that he gave me at the time we were in the meditation room was a picture of one of these Tibetan deities. And he said, he often gave me things, small things like that, and said, you'll need this someday, or you'll find this useful. And I thought, no, how could I possibly, it looks like a very, an antique maybe. And I have no idea what it means or who the picture's of or anything like that. And he just encouraged me to keep those things and use them when they surfaced in my consciousness again. And as that has surfaced in some rather interesting ways in the Tibetan tradition, I think I find it most interesting. And then one of the things I found recently in looking at some of the background and of Dr. Thin and things like that, there was some that think he was tied to the Rajya group, and that may be. I couldn't find any record from that. The record I could find was that they were not particularly fond of him. They thought he had, not represented some of their teaching correctly, or that, it had been lifted or utilized in some of his text. And even when one of the senior members of that group asked his wife, who was his teacher, who did he consider his guru? And she was quick to assure them that he told them that his teacher was an enlightened being or master from Tibet, and that he was in a direct line from Guru Nanak. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And I get all these different facts and put them together and say, well, that's interesting. I didn't realize. But then I go back and I look at the teaching, and I begin to explore what he's really saying and how it applies to my life. And if I understand the roots of it, can I apply it in a way that makes it easier for me to understand and to interact? And I found that, yes, that's a real possibility. And so his smiling face, greets me constantly, and I continue to work on these things. I do always come back to this, seek truth in meditation, not in moldy books. Look into the sky to see the moon, not in the pond. And one reason I constantly add that in is whenever possible, I also try to show text or books that are supportive of the information that I'm sharing and teaching. And I found that some people learn very well through information in a book, and in a written form, or in a lecture of this type. But it can be helpful, but we don't want to get lost. And it's easy if you keep books around and you read them to get lost in thinking they know the truth, or they have the true reality. The true reality is what we can practice and what we can know, and what we can validate in ourselves. And many of the things that I've showed are efforts to say what I perceive most about his teaching was that you need to validate it, you need to test it, you need to see. And Dr. Thin, I go back to his work, and he says, it's a scientific process, can easily be done. And so I look at the Tibetan traditions based on all of that, and then I go back and look at a lot of the advanced classes and what Audley was teaching and sharing. And then this is an opening quote out of one of the texts, that Introduction to Tantra. And it says, then the swirling ocean of Tantra is crossed through the kindness of the navigator, the Viraja holder. That's the one who has made the transition. Bless me to cherish more than my life, the vows and the accomplishments, the roots of attainment. And with these inspiring words, the first Panchen Lama introduced the practice of Tantra in his monumental work, the Lama Chopra, which is offering to the spiritual guide, and clearly showing with what high self-esteem the Vajrayana, the true manifestation of the Tibetan expression of the teaching of the Buddha, or what they came to refer to as the diamond vehicle, in which the practices of Tantra are taught. And this was regarded by the great masters of Tibetan Buddhism. Though these words were written nearly 400 years ago, this high regard for the practice of Tantra remains to this day. And in a true sense, if you dive deeply into the Tibetan Buddhism and the teachings, the knowledge of how the mind works and how the thoughts arise in the field of mind, how they can be discriminated, knowing truth from untruth, and by utilizing the tools that are there, a person is able to go deeper. And then when we get to Audley, he's in there doing a lot of classes about diamond bodies and how to make them, and how to run the energy in them, and how to crystallize. And some of the techniques are directly mirrored in the Tibetan traditions of how the diamond body is formed and how it can be purified. And it's to some extent, it's a symbol of purity. It's a symbol of wholeness, of the hardest substance that humankind knows. And there's a lot of symbology tied to it as well. But it's in knowing that part of your consciousness, or anchoring in that, you can go deeper. And sometimes, he had it inverted, and works either way, and then I do these things and do them, where I can concentrate on the diamond form and do two of them. And so I can, cross my eyes and get that third one out there and listen to the mantra or chant the mantras and go along with that, but really work to create that in my own consciousness. And then sometimes I try mixing them together and seeing what I come up with, or what my mind will create, like even different forms of this type of concentration technique. I have different colored dots and things like that. And I find it fascinating that when you look at forms that are different a little bit, your mind kind of fills in the gaps. And so when you go into your altered state where you create the third image, it will be transformed in some way, and you may learn more about yourself. But anyway, the diamond body is a key part of the Tibetan tradition, and the whole vehicle, the diamond vehicle, the path is considered one with that. And then according to Lama Yeshe, who he's the author of, there's a series of books that one of the people that I have come to enjoy a lot. He wrote quite a bit, but also gave some clear explanation and introduction into some of the areas. And according to Lama Yeshe, the practice of Tantra is suitable for the modern West because it is scientific, and that keeps coming up in Dr. Thin's work and Yogananda's work. Everything was trying to say it's scientific. And in other words, for Tantra, it's far from being a system of dogma to be accepted on faith or authority. It is, in fact, a practical step-by-step exploration of the human condition, leading to self-discovery. And its results are verifiable through our own observation and experience. It is this emphasis on direct experience that should make Tantra appealing to the great number of Westerners who have long been disillusioned with paths demanding belief and blind faith. Furthermore, as the following chapters should make abundantly clear, Tantra is a path of joy and affirmation, qualities so sadly lacking in many of the current depleted forms of what were once powerful spiritual traditions. And the text, there's a number of them. If you have interest, I can send you links to them, or you can look them up. He's one that writes very clearly in this the introduction to Tantra. It was a book that was worked on for a number of years and edited then after he passed away by some of his students. And I think they did, quite a masterful job in making it clear and easy to understand. But when you start understanding the whole kingdom, you end up in somewhat of a different place. You end up in a place where you can go to the different levels. You can, when you're awake, you may be doing your work and taking care of family or taking care of career duties or various things, or working on your own projects and finding ways to teach and share your own information. Those are all good. And then we go into our dreaming state, and we into the subtle realms. And it's literally, we talked a little bit about when we first were discussing things, you go to a different world almost, or a different universe, I think was one of the comments. And we all do live in kind of a different world, but there are common threads. And when I talk about, you can test those things. If you tell me you live in a particular world, we can see if there's common things that, it's just like one of the things is, does gravity behave the same way in your world as mine? And if you apply these thought processes to things like physical world and then subtle world, you'll find that the laws of physics are somewhat different in different expressions or different realms. And as some of us, like I've been having a number of discussions with Rusty Boyd, who some of you may know from the old Lotus Center days, and we put it in terms of scientific exploration. We've been working through several texts on entanglement of particles in quantum mechanics, and trying to understand. And everywhere we go, we find these same things. It comes down to direct experience. And when you try to measure particles, sometimes you get one result measuring them in one way, and a different result measuring them in another way. And they behave as a particle in one case and as a wave in another case. And it's a lot of things, but it's all part of the kingdom and the expression. One thing that we found is that there are transitions between the worlds or between the realms. And these transitions always become very fuzzy and imprecise in a way. And in quantum mechanics, a number of things pop out, like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You can't know the position and the mass of a product or its momentum at the same time. The more accurately you know one, the more fuzzy the other one becomes. And it's very much like the experience in meditation and observing the thoughts in the mind. And there's lots of corollaries there that can be explored. But the biggest thing from all this is that there are, I guess, multiple methods and paths that can be followed. And they all get you to a place where you become aware of the fact that, oh my God, this is what I am. This is the kingdom. And then, as you develop skill in moving between the levels, and you develop skill in controlling the mind and focusing on the things that you want to create, rather than being a slave to what's created around you, or maybe listening to other people's thoughts about how they view you, and or how they view what you've accomplished in your life, and all those things. We can take those in, and we can go over them and repeat them as our mantra, or we can simply repeat mantras that clear all that away. And it's, for me, the mantras are thought processes. And oddly, a key part of Audley and Dr. Thin's teaching both was a mantra shared, and a mantra also in the Kriya tradition. There were several mantras that are shared. Often if you're just studying in an organization that teaches Kriya Yoga, there's 2 or 3 different mantras that are often given right at the start. And there's similar mantras to what we were given, but all traditions. And there's short forms of mantras, and then there's long forms. And the mantra that we were given, if you were one of Audley's students, and I think he gave most students the same, but there may be differences. I find amazing new things all the time. And I just tell people, don't talk about whatever he told you. that's, that's for you. But, sometimes we can't resist, and even though he may have said, don't talk about that, that's, then, it's just like people like to know. They like to know how much people make in the company, and they like to know what secret teachings that he gave that he didn't give anyone else. And there's some teachings that he actually told me. He said, I don't give this to everybody. And so, it's just like, well, how do you find out who he shared this with, without asking the question or telling anybody that, you have this information? And so you have to be patient, and you wait, and people, I'm amazed, they'll often tell you what you want to know or don't want to know, or what their experience. But he was very specific in his teaching for each person. And I know from a fact in what he shared with me, that some of the things he gave me were just like Neo going to the Oracle in the Matrix movie. These are things that are just for you. And so you do that. But then anything that's shared, it's a technique or a method, a meditation. If you can't experience it yourself, and you can't verify it, if you can't practice it and get the result that was defined, that you should have, like a liberation or enlightenment or things like that, then you may question the whole teaching. And so that's a very human condition. And you practice for a few times, and like the mantra that I played, the 100-syllable mantra, some people say, I have no idea, it's in a different language. And I say, well, I learn different languages regularly. I can learn that one. And it's a hard one for me, because some of the sounds are not sounds that I've heard before. Just like some languages that I've studied, they have very difficult sounds that maybe I didn't map into my brain when I was a child or a baby. Actually, in the first 12 months, we do most of the mapping for language. And if you're exposed to multiple languages, you speak all of them without accent. If you're, as a child, if you're not exposed to native speakers, then you grow up and you simply don't have those sounds in your vocabulary or your repertoire of sounds that the ear can process and hear. And there's a lot of studies that have been done by linguists. And I've always had, since we're on a path of sound, the holy Nam, I like to explore how the ear works and go visit neuroscientists that, that specialize in otolaryngology, or ear, nose, and throat kind of thing, and neuroscientists that study how those signals are processed in the brain. And I'll do a talk on that at some point later. But there's a lot of things, but what we try to do is have a direct experience of it. And if you can't experience it, then I question it. I just say, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. The first response could be, well, possibly I didn't understand the instruction, and I've been practicing wrong. And I found with doing some of the mantra, when I first start, like with the 100-syllable mantra, it's like there's a lot of new sounds in it. And when I first start, it just sounds like noise. I can't distinguish any word in the mantra, especially when I thought it was a Sanskrit mantra, and it turned out to be that the lady was chanting in Tibetan. And there's some similarities, but some real differences. And so I had no idea. And so I try to, when I start trying to speak a new language, I just listen to the sounds. I listen to the repetition of it, and then I try to mumble along, or chant the sounds. And in time, after I work with a mantra, even like the 100-syllable mantra, I work on it for a couple of months, and I can get maybe half of the words. I can hear 70% of them, but I can only speak them. My brain can only process so fast. And at first I thought, well, this lady chants really fast, and I've known a few people that chant really fast, and it really energizes a mantra when they're chanting more quickly. And I thought, well, I should find somebody who's chanting it slowly. It might be easier to learn. So I found some slow chanters, and I found they were, after I'd listened to her fast chanting for a while, the slow ones were too slow. And I got to where I preferred the faster. And I thought, well, some of them seem so fast, I don't know if I'll ever be able to learn that concept, or that repetition, learn to say it, even learn to pronounce it. It's like it goes so fast, it's just like blah, 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 blah. And I think, wow, take time. And so I work on it. And, I've talked to a few people, and there's a few people that are in agreement to try to learn to do the 100-syllable mantra. And it reminds me, the closest mantra I've studied toward it is the Gayatri Mantra. And it also, as you do it, it does different, activates different centers in the body. And I think you could probably make a chart that actually showed, well, if you can hear these words and you can pronounce those and say them back, that means you're kind of okay in these centers. But these that you can't hear anything at all, those are areas where I still need to work. And it took me a number of months to work through the Gayatri Mantra and to learn that and to be able to repeat it. And still, though, I like to follow along with the group that's chanting it. And I find, a particular musician or a pandit, one that's expert in doing mantra, and listen to them, because the traditions say that if you say them properly, and I think I found one text I was going to read. This is out of the Vajrasattva Meditation, an illustrated guide, and it's a fascinating guide because it's actually done in China by some of the Tibetans that are still there. So and it has a little different flavor to it, but it's extremely well done and very clear. But the one of the things, if I can find this, to recite correctly the 100-syllable mantra 21 times, while clearly visualizing Vajrasattva seated on a white lotus, and moons constitute the blessings of the downfalls, which are thus kept from increasing. Thus the great cities, or the great masters, the siddhas, the ones who have the powers, have taught us. So practice it always. And if you can do it perfectly 21 times, it at least keeps the negative stuff from growing. But if you chant it 100,000 times, you'll become the very embodiment of purity, of utter purity. And so there's a lot of references, many of the texts, and they make outlandish claims, like if you do this mantra 100,000 times, you'll be purified, you'll be aware and conscious. And 100,000 times doesn't seem to me to be too many times. I quickly get out my little calculator and figure that when the lady's chanting fast, she does it in about 30 seconds. And so if you can do 100 times or 108 times, in 30, 40 minutes, if you get good at it. And so if you want to do 100, say even 100 an hour, if you can practice 10 hours a day listening or chanting, that you can do 1,000 a day. And so in 100 days, you could do 100,000 iterations. And it seems fairly small, but kind of an intense, concentrated effort during that period. And a lot of people say that sounds insane. And I said, yeah, it does, but it's kind of fun. It feels good when you do it. And so I start, practicing these, and I have found that when any of the mantras that if I get up to the 100,000 times, it's just like they come alive. All of a sudden, they just doing a few repetitions, they result in a blissful state of mind, and can really calm and remove negativity, or work in healing the body and helping to know what you are. And the more control you have of the mind to be able to select the correct mantra or tool or procedure or diamond body practice or pineal gland exercise, the more that you know about the kingdom and the more control you have of the mind in dealing with that, the more enjoyable life can be. And
but Ben,
yes,
when you chant these mantras for 10 hours a day for 100 days, doesn't the rest of your life kind of just go to crap?
How do you mean go to crap?
Well, I mean, like, do you still have a job, or
Oh yeah,
does
that's
does
the
your does your family still want to be with you, or
yeah, no, they all think you're weird,
yeah,
and the companies that you work for fire you,
yeah,
and and you starve to death. No, it's that's
right?
that's what it would seem like on the surface, but
I see a
you
problem.
know, it's I found that there's a lot of ways to to just move into it, and just like if you listen to the most of the versions that you'll find online of all these mantras, there's 108 repetitions, and the longer mantras all take 40 to 50 minutes to do 100, and then the short mantras like the Om Ganapati Namaha, the mantra to Ganesha, that one is it's a little bit longer, but it only takes a few minutes, like 7 or 8 minutes, and you can do 108. At a normal speed. And if you kicked it into gear, you could, do more. And I only know a few people that can chant at I guess the faster speeds. And, and you start doing it, practicing it like in your morning meditation. Like I get up and my meditation routine is I generally, get up, do my, the bathroom stuff and all that. And then I sit down in the meditation chair and I begin to practice. And some days I practice just a silent meditation. It's like go inside, do my inner mantra, and then go into oneness. Other days I work on, like if I'm working on learning a new mantra or doing that, I will get up and I will, if it's brand new for me, I just listen to it. And I don't have any concern about, if it takes me 45 minutes to listen to 108 iterations, I listen to it and then I meditate in silence for a few moments. And then I go through the day, and I am in my work situation as such, but always have done this where if I'm driving, which if you live in California, it seems like you get to drive a lot. And there's plenty of good traffic, and that's good for listening to books or chanting mantra or learning languages. That's where I spend my time. I go for a walk for an hour, maybe 2 hours a day. When I'm walking, I'm either listening to a book or I have a mantra. And like I've been working on the 100-syllable mantra for, going on, I guess, into the second or third month. And so I listen to it and it becomes a little bit addictive. Some of these things I found that if they're really a powerful mantra that seems to be having an effect on the body and on the mind, it's just like I want to hear it more and more. And so when I walk, when I meditate, when I do my shower, when I do all those things, I can have the mantra running in my mind. And then when people come in that I need to deal with in business, or, a phone rings and I need to answer that, or I need to have a discussion, I stop and do that. And then I go back to my mantra. It's building habits. And I look at it from the perspective that, my employer, my friends, my family, everybody, I talk to them and I listen to them, and I share my own experiences, but I find that we all have our own mantras going on all the time. And some of the mantras are useful, and some of us are, are the mantras that we're going over, we just digging the hole deeper. And that's, I think, Dr. Wayne Dyer, that used to be one of his famous lines, if you find yourself in a deep hole, the first thing you want to do is put the shovel down. And so, when you begin to talk about doing things like this, or exploring the whole kingdom, or knowing what you are, you might want to put the shovel down. That is the message that you were given as a child, that you're not worthy, that you're not capable. Like nobody like you could ever do that. And we can get some of those mantras or some of those thought processes injected in our experience, and they're very powerful. We accept the person, whoever gave them to us, as the supreme wizard, and whatever they say must be true. And so I'm not very worthy. I can't get a good job. I can't do that. I can't do these things. Well, all of those thoughts and that negativity, these mantras in particular for me, they're the quick and easy ways to change the record, or change the pattern, change the thought process that's going on in the mind. And some of them, if you do them, the more you do them, the more they feed on themselves, and so it becomes increasingly powerful. And some people, like as I've talked about the Vajrasattva meditation and mantra and the guru, there's been several people that have asked, well, why do you do this? And I said, well, one of the things is, Audley gave me this picture of the guy that is referenced in some of these, and in the Tibetan tradition, and then he gave me that picture of Tathagata is what these are often called, and you can buy them, and there's very expensive ones, there's very cheap ones. You can even get them on Amazon, like $10 or $12 for something similar to what he gave me. But you can begin to share that. But the reason that why Viraja Saatva or Virajayana, it's like he was an ordinary guy, kind of like us, and out on a story, trying to learn about his life. And he had received teachings from a teacher, and the teachings were do some of these things, and there's a few vows, like you should I want you to take a vow to meditate every day for the rest of your life, and I want you to be nice to people, and not say unkind things. Those are are typical sort of things that teachers ask students to do, and then they ask them to practice, and they give them opportunities to serve others, or to teach, or to work on pick up garbage and do things like that. But the reason that Virajayana or Vajrasattva, the guru that he is followed, he was when he first got instructions, he was like the rest of us. He didn't necessarily keep his commitments that well. It's just like, well, I was partying late last night, and it's just like, I know I was supposed to do those kriyas, but it's just like, oh, I was so tired, and then I was kind of drunk, and I just fell asleep, and I forgot, and it's like, well, makeover's there. It's just like it's done, but it happens. We're human, and we make mistakes in our life, and especially if we don't have control of the mind, and we haven't verified what we are, we haven't understood the life process, and so we do it. And so there's the teachings, all of the traditions give us some kind of tools, or give us techniques, practices that help us to get through these. And the practices are really ridiculously simple in some ways. It's just like, go around and mumble this stuff in Tibetan, for 100 days, as many times as you can during the day. And you'll be better, and you'll be happier. Well, that's something that you can test, you can validate. You can listen to it. It's just like if you want to practice the teaching, like when you first came to Audley, or when you first met him, he gave some instruction and said, do this, this, and this, and meditate in this way. And if you do, you should have this experience, this experience, this experience, and you can try it. And if it doesn't work, come tell me. That would be the sort of thing he would say. Or maybe he would just say, don't believe a word I say. That was often one of his responses. And he said, you turn within, find out what your own experience brings to you. But it seems like an insane thing to do, and to do 100,000 iterations of something that takes 30 seconds. But in the next 3 months, you'll be utilizing the same amount of time for something else, something that you desire, something that you feel good about, or something that you feel bad about, something that you crave, something that you're angry about. We fill all these in with our own mantra, our own thought process. And a great deal of them, if you talk to people even just a few moments, you can ask them, what is the most important thing in their life? What are they most afraid of? things like that. You find out very quickly, what do they think about all the time? And so if they want to have a different life, or to experience their kingdom, their life, their awareness in a different way, they can simply make different inputs, and you get different outputs. And in that sense, it doesn't seem like it takes so much time. And if you could really have enlightenment in a short period of time, would you choose it? It's just like, well, if you could give someone $10,000 and get enlightenment right now, would you do it? And or 100,000 or 1,000,000 or $1 billion? Is there any amount of money? There's something that you can do, but it's like, these are one of those things that can't be bought. It's like love. You can, if I give you $100,000, will you love me? And it's just like, that's not the way it works in this world. But there is ample time, and it's just kind of what we want to focus on. And and it's like, you don't have to do the full 100,000 to get a result. Even if you learn to do 21 of them correctly, it keeps the negative stuff from growing, is what they're saying. Well, I've been working at it a couple of months, and I'd say I haven't got 21 repetitions yet, but I will. I just keep working at it. That's kind of the way I approach stuff. And then as you're doing it, one of the things I did notice in realizing that this is a 100-syllable mantra, I thought about my mantras that I had been given in my life, and most, by Audley, because I was really quite young when I first met him, and so he was clearly one of the dominant teachers in my life, and most of I would say the real root or core teaching, core information, it all came through him and by him. But when you do this mantra, you visualize each symbol in the 100-syllable mantra standing up straight, and you can see those. There's a whole procedure and practice that goes with it, and actually doing things similar to how we would build bodies or do things with Audley's teachings. There's like this little book, the Illustrated Guide. It's got a bunch of pictures of how the visualization works. Like this particular image, it's like you're imagining the guru or the mantra that you're saying. You're imagining it floating on a white lotus about 1 arrow's length, or what did Audley draw? Like roughly 2.5, 3 feet. An arrow length. If we're pre-guns, we're bow and arrow kind of guys. It's an arrow length above the head is where the white lotus is setting, and you visualize the guru in that space, in that white awareness, that spiritual self, Godhead, God awareness, and then the techniques have you bring that energy into your body as you meditate, and then as you flow it out of your body, all of the snakes and the bugs and the rodents, all of the negative things, the fears flow out of you. And then there's a whole series of techniques and visualizations that are done in the tantric practices, and they're very much, and clearly the teachings that Audley was giving us were, if they were listed and classified along others, they would be in a very true sense tantric teachings, tantric meditations, tantric processes, and they're very powerful processes, and you can go you can go astray fairly easily. It's just like it's important, if you're using techniques like these that he gave, and like some of these mantras, that you have a knowledgeable teacher or guide that can actually help you, navigate through these and guide you. And a lot of that mantra is simply a supplication. It's to a request or an acknowledgement of the knowledge, the teaching, the guru, the group, the sangha. It's acknowledging all of that and asking for it to help you have a clear mind, so that you can see and always remember the truth. so that you can always remember what you are and not be, distracted in fear or greed or anger. And if you let the negative thoughts rise in the mind and you feed them, then they can cause you unrest and uneasy. And if you do these fast path, fast pass things that you can move quickly, like with the Kriya techniques and some of these mantra techniques, in really short periods of time, you can make major changes in your consciousness. And I can tell you that, and you probably say, it sounds like it might be good. Mythology could be a, made up magical thinking kind of stuff. But the only way you can know is you try it. And, and you try listening to it for a short period of time, or if you don't like to do mantra, which I find that a lot of people don't, it just suits my nature. They like different type of concentration inside. And there's, I have notebooks full of sketches of all these techniques that oddly showed how to do various things. And there are techniques that can remove, and help balance negativity. But as I find that it's often challenging to do just through meditation, especially without having a guide or someone to help me know when I'm going the wrong way. It's just like I'll get lost in my thoughts, or sometimes just get lost completely, even in the physical world, and I'm driving somewhere and I have no idea where I am, and I have no idea how to get from where I am back to where I started. And the road is run out. I've had that happen a few times. I end up in the mountains somewhere, and I'm just out there. Maybe I was doing mantra or various things, but it was it's easy to go the wrong way. And when you've gone the wrong way or you've gotten lost, it's helpful to have a memory or to recall what you've done. And if you've built a habit to think of the guru or the teaching, and to apply it, or you've developed concentration techniques with yantra or with images, with seeds in terms of how you move into the deepest part of yourself, or you've done it with mantra. And some of the mantra, I find that they're fascinating because they have different components, and they can affect you in different ways. And I know the mantra that we were, I think most people were given at the initiations with Audley, they're very like 2-syllable mantras. If you say them in Oki with an Oki accent, or maybe 3 syllables if you spread it out. But they're very short mantra, and they're easy to do. And I always considered the mantra that Audley shared as the magic mantra. And for me, it was something not to be spoken. It was only to be spoken in the mind or in the subtle realm in that way. And it's one of my hang-ups and my fixations is I like to not speak that, but it only has a few syllables. And I thought at first, when I thought back, it's only a 2-syllable mantra. And then I was, as I was, reading through some of this and studying some other things, there's another text that I refer often to people. It's called The Joyful Path of Good Fortune. And it's about this whole process. And he talks about the mantra, the process, the tantra, the procedures, and how they can be done. But one of the things that he says is that all sorts of teachings, and what has amazed me with the Tibetan and Christian and all the various traditions is no matter how bad you've sinned, there's a story about it. Someone that did that and they still attained salvation by doing the mantra or by doing the prescribed actions. And in Christianity, you find very similar things. You can just simply by believing or by doing the prayers or the different procedures that are given in the religious tradition, that you can find liberation from some of these things. But and he references one story, and I like it. When Audley does the initiations, he always shares some stories about the guru and how, sometimes the gurus, has some negative characteristics. He isn't fully anchored in himself. And some days he has good days, or she has good days, and then she has bad days, and the bad days can be really tough. They can be upsetting to people, and that. So how do you get past all that and still not turn against the teaching? Maybe realize the teacher has some things they need to work on, just like, my God, they're human just like me. But stories are given, in one of the stories in the text that says that this one guru, he got excited and he just started sharing all the information with all the students, and some of them weren't ready for that level of instruction. And one of the people, when he got the secrets from the inner stuff, he became so good at some of the negative components to the tradition that he became the king of demons. And he was, able to take advantage of everybody in all the world. And that was because he had understood, based on his nature, what was given in the teaching. Another student that sat in the same lecture, but that was prepared and done that, actually, followed the teaching to its completion, became one with the self, one with the divine self, became one with the Buddha consciousness, and began to express that. And he was able to subdue the demon that comes. So all of these stories are there. And then stories about one of the gurus. He was almost ready to transition into the oneness, had gone all the way through. And then he began to realize and have the thought that surfaced in his mind that there was no one. He had all the knowledge that could be had. There was no one that had more knowledge that he did. And so pride entered in a little bit. And as he began to think about that, he thought, damn, there is one person who has more knowledge than I do. It's my teacher. And he began to let that feed and let that negativity rise. And to the point that he eventually, the anger overcame him, the pride overcame him, and he ends up killing the teacher. And the teacher, just before he dies, he sees all this happening, and he actually curses the student. And so they go through multiple hell worlds together and all kinds of strange things, but they never they get stuck in a world. And one of the teachers, or one of the gurus or the Buddhas in the high heaven, the self, looks down and says, "This is crazy." And breaks the bond that holds them together so that they can be free. But the biggest thing is that no matter what, the teacher may have information, even though they may not have all of their life put together, they may have the piece of information you need right now to attain the liberation for yourself. And so it's very important to put things in proper perspective, and to be able to share those in a way that makes sense. And the particular mantras, and I'll send this out or post it if people want. But the Vajrasattva Mantra in meditation, here it is it's the Tibetan pronunciation. This is the Sanskrit pronunciation, and it's really a fun mantra in some ways. Probably the thing that everybody asks is well, what does it mean? They want to have some sense for what it really means. And there's an English version here that Om Vajrasattva, keep your samyaya. The practice is what this is. This is the please stay true to that. And then as the Vajrasattva, as the Buddha, remain near me, be steadfast toward me, be very pleased with me, be completely satisfied with me, be loving to me, grant me all the accomplishments in all actions, make my mind pure and virtuous. And then there's some of the terms in there that I encourage, if you have interest in this, to understand it more. And then, oh blessed one, the Vajra nature, all of the Buddhas, all of the Tathagatas, do not abandon me. Be the Viraja nature, oh great Samyama, being and that's kind of a rough translation, but it basically says, it's just like it's like the Om Mani Padme Hum is the jewel in the lotus, and it's talking about that white lotus, or that the God self. It's that form, and you want to completely supplicate or prostrate yourself to that. You want to surrender to that, so that you're not caught in the negative thoughts in your mind, and the pain and the suffering in the world. And the samyama, it's in the Yoga Sutras, that I'll talk about at another point, writes that the cities are attained, or the powers are attained after mastery of the last 3 steps of the Eightfold Path. And that's the ability to simultaneously sustain concentration, meditation, and samadhi at will. And samadhi at will, it means you didn't just touch it, but you can go there and sit in it. Sustained in the context means a highly focused, unwavering, deeply absorbed meditative state, as opposed to an obsessive mental chattering indefinitely, if one so wishes, if you can get into that. So I think that's kind of the overall information that I wanted to cover, just to kind of maybe wrap up in just a few things. The kingdom or mastery of it, it's like there's a lot of tools available that allow you to master all different parts of the mind, the body, the health, all the components, and you can focus on them. There's ways to approach it through mantra, through medications, through remediations. There's a lot of things that can be done. It's often said in Buddhism that the Buddha had 84,000 different remediations for the various problems that may affect humans, and that was because of the number of students that came to him, that they recognize that many people that come have the same kind of problem. And so they come and, you're angry about your parents. They didn't treat you very nice when you were a little kid, or they abused you, or they didn't give you food, or they told you how bad you were. And they were trying to scare you into being nice in some way, or to being good. And so they said, if you do these things, you'll go to hell and you'll burn there forever. And I remember, getting some of these talks when I was, 5 and 6 years old, and it was frightening. But some of those stay with you a long time. But you practice these things, and a lot of them they just disappear. They dissipate that energy within you. So the negativity's gone. And when that negativity is gone, then you can go into any level in the kingdom. And even if you don't have full mastery in that level, you can go into it and you can enjoy it. And if you find that you get there and some desire arises, or some some issue arises that wants you it demands your attention. You want to go over it and over it and over it, and you want to think how bad they are, how good they are, whatever. But it's easy to do that. But if you know the tools and you keep a list of them, and for me, sometimes I forget things. So I just make a little list, did you do your meditation today? Did you do your mantra? Did you, did you go for a walk? That always makes you feel better. Did you have water? Did you hydrate properly? Did you take care of yourself? But those are all things. And then if I do have a problem and I get lost and I, break vows or do things that I wished I hadn't have done, there are ways to balance that energy, to clarify it. I usually start with kriyas and do my mantra and do various things, but enjoy the life. Well, I think that kind of summarizes. We live in a beautiful kingdom, even though we're all in different locations right now. And in each one of our kingdoms, though, they're very unique to us. If you look at them carefully, there are many commonalities, and it's just like, it seems like everybody that I know, for the most part, has 5 fingers and on each hand, and 5 toes, and we look similar. So there are commonalities, and when we go into the inner worlds, we have similar experiences when we chant mantra in the correct way, when we practice our meditation in the correct way. We have common or similar experiences, so we can share and validate and enjoy that world in between us. But I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Maybe we take a short break and then we can have questions if there's interest. Any comments, questions?
I thought we were taking a break.
We are. I'm broke. No.
Okay, I have one.
Okay. Now we can start. If anybody needs a break, just take a break and come back when you want. And if you don't want to come back, don't. Okay.
From your practice with the mantra, have you found out that the mind itself is a creature of habit in a way, like it has its own mind, pun intended. And if you get into a mantra and you practice it for a long time, or an affirmation that you keep repeating, or you control your self-talk and it gets to like it, it will, and you somehow drop off, it will invent 1,000 ways to get you back to it and present you an opportunity to do it.
Yes. There's an interesting thing about what oddly often described as what we are as a bundle of memories tied by a string of habits. And so the part of the way the mind works, that was there's whole volumes written in Tibetan and in Sanskrit both about what that really means. But what it really, what it comes down to is, the mind has a little bit of a life of its own, and if you feed it stuff, it'll start growing and create whole worlds in itself, and that it thinks it owns and it thinks it's in control of. And if you go to sleep and you wake up, you think, oh my God, I need to get to work. I got to get this sale. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's a continuity of consciousness that's clearly tied to the habits that we have. But the beauty of some of the techniques that are given, like the mantra that he gave at the initiations, it's considered, I would say accurately, probably a 3-syllable. The way he pronounced it, it's a 2-syllable. And it's just because Oki's dropped the end of a lot of words. And and that makes it a little more difficult. But the reason I come back to that is that there's one section of one of the texts, and it says, there's basically 3 kinds of students that come to a teacher. And the first kind, are the students without much capability. And even if you tell them even a short mantra, that they may not be able to remember it. And you may tell them the exact truth in the teaching. By the time they walk out the door, they can't remember what it was. In fact, they don't even remember who you are. These are people that don't have much skill and or have very little, but a great teacher will see what seed they need planted in their mind that will mature at some point, that will help them come to an understanding or a liberation. And then the next level of students come and they have a little bit of capability, so the teacher can give them a little information. And I think I fall in the little information category. I got the mantra that it sounded like to me it had 2 syllables, and I could repeat it over and over, but it was a magical mantra that was given, in that when anytime I sit still or I sit quietly, it comes into my mind all by itself. It had it's a mantra with legs. It's always there. It's I can taste it, I can hear it, I can feel it, I can know it. And so anytime I get really distracted or disturbed or frustrated, I can listen to it, and I can remember some of the teachings, some of the time. So I figure, I'm in the category to where, I can at least remember, his name, and I can remember, where he lived and what city it was in, and some of the interesting facts. And then there's the third level of student that are the gifted students, and they can start with the 100-syllable mantra, and boom, they've got it immediately, and they can do like 500-syllable mantras, and they know them all in their mind, and they can say them perfectly and very fast. And they're liberated beings, and I would just say that I feel very fortunate in my life that I've met a few of these type people, that have the ability to open in that way, that can really understand the fullness of it, and they've done it in various ways. Some of them in very traditional ways through either the Christian tradition, the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu tradition. Some just heard about it and started doing the mantra, for example, and the mantra changed them, and all of a sudden they have an awareness, and they know all about it, and they don't need a teacher in the world or anything like that. They have it clarifies their own being, or purifies their consciousness in a way so that they have a direct contact with their own being, with the inner self. And so they know what they need to do to take care of providing balance in their world. And those are, a place where we all, I think, hope to get to at some point. And then there was a question, the mantras, which ones I like. I mean, clearly for me, the Gayatri Mantra is one of my most favorite, and I do that one often and have done it for years. The Ganesha Mantra, anytime there's challenges, like I have several friends right now that are struggling, needing work, looking for jobs, doing various things. And so, I work with them, and that's a great mantra to remove blockages and obstacles. And those may be the things in their own mind. And that one you can do and help encourage people. The Vajrasattva Mantra, I really am learning to enjoy that. And I thought it was very interesting. I couldn't figure out, I always look to what's thread what pulled me to have an interest to look at that. And some of it was, as I was preparing various lectures, it kept cropping up. And then after I did the mantra a few times, then I remembered the picture that Audley took off the wall and gave to me and said, keep this until you'll need it someday, it'll be useful to you. And so it stimulated a mantra. And I think at this point, I can get maybe, 40% of the words I can hear, or I can pronounce and say with the mantra. Maybe 60 or 70% I can actually hear the words, but some of them are just too fast or too different. I can't make the sound yet. But I know that if I keep listening, that my brain will modify and will be adjusted, and I'll be able to do that mantra with great precision and great efficacy, so that it's very powerful. And I know already, I mean, I can tell usually in a new mantra, if I start doing it, if I look for signs, does it take me to the awareness of the self? If it does, that's so good. Does it take me to a blissful state? That one is really nice. I like that. Is there any negative to it? Is there any fear associated with it? And I just explore all these things to see what it is. But I think I have enough, confidence in the teaching and in the teachers that I've had and in my own inner self that I can test the things, and I can find the ways to increase the awareness and to increase the capability of it. Does that make sense? I mean, does that follow?
Well, yes, of course, but you covered a lot there. The point I was trying to figure out is if you had a similar experience, that the mind is like a baby. You can start with a new mantra, and it may not like it, but in the course of the practice, it gets to like it, and it has to like it. Yes. And it will bring you back when you divert from it.
Yes.
Okay.
That one I agree with 100%.
Okay.
And some of them, it's just like, yeah, they're they seem strange at first, especially like if it's a completely foreign language and it's not something you're familiar with and not a tradition. It can be like a bitter pill almost to take it. But you know, if somebody says you do this 100,000 times and you get enlightenment and you think, boy, you know, maybe I could do it fast. Like I found on YouTube, there's a control that you can control the playback speed of various videos, and so I try slowing them down, and you can slow it down to 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or you can speed it up to 2x, and and you can play with it. You can see if it has the effect if it's twice as fast, and when it slows down too much, I found that some of the things that sound like music when it's played at normal speed, it actually sounds like strange sounds when you play it at very slow speeds.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. There are many mantras I like at a certain rhythm. You change that and I don't want to hear it anymore.
I know. I've been there myself.
And especially if it's melodic one and has some music to it, so much the better.
Right. Well, so some of them I find I like if they're more musical or more like a song. But then a lot of them I found that I like them if it's more of a chant rather than a song. And
that's true. Yes.
You know, and I'm not sure what drives that, but I have noticed I have a little bit of a fixation in that area. You know, it's just like there's some styles that if it starts like that and sounds like that, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it doesn't take me to where I want to go. It may be feel good and it may be peaceful, but it doesn't take me, you know, it doesn't stimulate the chakras in a way that takes me to the place I want to be. And maybe that means I need to work on some of those. You know, maybe, you know, it's maybe one of the areas I'm fixated, you know.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are certain things that your mind likes and some others it doesn't.
Yeah, I know, but anytime there's something that I think in my mind, I don't like this, you know, it's just like, what is this really showing me? You know, it's an opportunity to see, why would I have that reaction? You know, that's, you know, you guard the mind carefully to see what seeds come up and what's planted, what grows in the garden. You know, just like even the flower garden here at the place where I'm working, you know, no matter how hard they try, the weeds find a way to come up in any bare spot that's left, you know, and so they keep doing. The mind tends to work in that same way.
That's an excellent metaphor, but my experience is when you get it to a certain practice, a habit, the mind itself will detect the weeds coming up and will invent ways to get you back to your practice.
Right. No, I think I consider that the only thing that's the grace of God. You know, that's the true blessing that we all have. You know, and that's why I think the Creator or the whole creation, I see that it loves itself so much and it wants to experience all of what it is, all of the kingdom. And so it has all these built-in protections that no matter what you do, even if you're totally evil and you don't do anything but hurt other people throughout time, in the end, you know, we all go through that process and we all go through that experience and we all know all parts of the kingdom. And that's a part of all of us. But that part that's lost in the suffering and the difficulty, that's not a fun place necessarily to hang out. You know, it can be painful.
I see. My dog has objections, so I need to go.
No problem.
Ben,
break. Yes, Ellen.
Does a mantra have to be in Tibetan?
No, it's mantra can be in any language, but there are some languages that are they seem to have been they arose or were created because there was an awareness of beings that it stimulated certain components or aspects of consciousness. And the one that I know most and that I've studied the most is Sanskrit. And the Tibetan is similar. Some of the words are the same words and pronounced in either language, some slight variation, but they and I played with like the Vajrasattva Mantra, played with it in Sanskrit and Tibetan. And I think, for me, it resonates a little better in the Tibetan, but it's just because I haven't spent as much time with the Sanskrit. But the actual alphabet in the Sanskrit language is tied to each one of the petals in the chakras. And so when you do those, you stimulate them more directly. You can try to emulate those sounds in English, but I found it doesn't work particularly well. English is just not a good language for describing a lot of this type of technique or this type of phenomena. It's not rich in it, where like Sanskrit was created as a language formed as a result of expressions in consciousness, is kind of what it seems. And as a result, you can go back and you can pronounce those sounds and you can activate certain parts of your own being. I've seen some of that in Hebrew with some of the techniques and traditions, but rhythm in the Hebrew or the style of chanting or style of prayer that's done seems to have more effect. I've seen some of it in Latin. If it's intoned properly, it will activate centers and open those up. I've seen bits of it in other languages, but I have to agree with a lecture I saw recently. English is one of the poorest languages to try to express spiritual components or spiritual phenomena in. And I think it's interesting, but it seems to be kind of true. It's weak. And so anytime anyone explains it, they often use the term from Sanskrit that doesn't have an English translation, direct things like that, or the term from the Tibetan in the Buddhist traditions, or you find some of it in Japanese and in Chinese, both as Buddhism migrated through. There were versions of the language that were done, or they tried to make the same sounds and explain that. But just like in Tibetan, they basically do a version of it's just like the Sanskrit with a Tibetan accent is kind of how it's pronounced, but they stimulate or activate the centers in different ways. And so language, the language that's used does seem to matter. And some languages are simply better at others at stimulating the chakras and the centers in the body.
But do you know what it means?
What do you mean what it means?
Well, can you translate?
You can, the translation that I gave of the Vajrasattva Mantra, it comes through as kind of a crude poem, or an effort to it's all saying basically that you're devoted to the teacher, to the teaching, and to the expression of that teaching, and that you're trying to I would say prostrate yourself or supplicate yourself. You're offering or surrendering your consciousness to that teaching and that awareness as being the truth. It's like a lot of it doesn't have direct translations. And so it's not like, it's like some languages we can translate pretty easy between French and English and get it, get the meaning very straightforward. And there's mostly anything that you can say in French, you can translate. And in fact, we use a lot of the French words in the English language and do that. But language is a tricky thing. And I would encourage, just to study linguistics to get, an appreciation for the various languages. And various languages, they were created or utilized or provided for various reasons. That's how we created them as consciousness.
Well, what I do is pray in the spirit, because I don't know what needs to be prayed for. Like on an airplane, before we take off, I pray in the spirit.
Yeah. But I think that one of the things that, Sanskrit takes you back to is the root sounds on a lot of words. And a lot of people even that, that do in like English. I often heard this in the Christian churches I was in, and the Baptist church and stuff. They would go back to either the Hebrew or the Greek versions of the Bible, and they would, make sure they were translating it and getting it correct and stuff like that. And you can get close to translation, but there's a lot of the languages that just don't translate completely. They don't have the concept so much. But Sanskrit, because of its alphabet and syllable structure, it actually is tied to consciousness. So if you want to express something in consciousness in that way, it's a very powerful way to do it, and you can be more precise in what you're describing.
So you do believe that Sanskrit relates to sounds or ideas in our...
Yeah, you can test it. There's a whole, like one of the charts, I think it's in this slide deck, but one of it, there's specific sounds or chants for each chakra.
Oh,
And the easiest way, I've been through a number of workshops or different things where they will have you, spend 30 minutes or an hour chanting the particular sound that's associated with one chakra or the other. Like just chanting Om, the Om sound is tied to the crown chakra. And
okay.
if you chant that at first audibly, and then you chant it stilly and chant it in silence and go in continuing to repeat that, you'll find that it makes you peaceful and calm. And that's because it centers consciousness there. And that sound alone, if done and utilized in that way, can be the trigger that takes you there.
Okay, thank you.
Ben,
Yes.
is there a benefit to just listening to the mantra like we did at the beginning, and maybe as you're more familiar with it, just humming
Yeah.
the sound?
That's the way I start with. If it's a mantra that I don't know or haven't heard before, that's how I start, and I call it mumbling along or humming along,
Yeah.
and I hum for the parts I don't know. And I think, that's where I was looking at trying to find a slower version. But after I had been, exposed to a faster version of it, I felt more comfortable with the faster, and I figured, my brain, it may take me 6 months longer to learn it at the fast speed rather than the slow speed, but I'm willing to make the effort, because I think if I learned it, my experience has been when I learn a mantra at a very slow speed, I get stuck in that speed. And it's hard for me to break out. And I know Ellen Grace O'Brien, who's the founder of the Center for Spiritual Awareness here in San Jose, she has a very fluid nature with mantra and can chant very fast. And she often chides the group, it's just like they want to start in and they want to go real slow. And it's just like, come on, guys, we need to get this moving. We want to activate, we want to stimulate consciousness so that we're active and clear in our mind and sharp. And so, there's a place for doing it, but I know 3 or 4 people that can chant at that kind of rate, and I've got a couple of mantras that I can do, but they're all real short, just like my own mental limitations. But I know that these are things that because of the neuroscientists I've worked with and the otolaryngologist I've worked with, I know that the brain can be remapped. You can change the thought process in it, and just like you can learn a new language, and you can work at it. And if you just focus on the sounds, not so much the written or what they're, if you can hear it, you can reproduce it. If you can't hear it, then you can't say the sound. Some of the linguists that I've studied, they say if you learn it based on an alphabet, like we translate it and we put it all in English, or we do this. If you learn it based on the symbols, you will learn it with the accent that of the language that you speak natively. And it's like, that's how we would make that sound in our language, in English. And so we do that, but and everybody's a little different. And so each regional part of the country, has a little different accent and hears it a little differently. But if you learn to speak without paying any attention to symbols, like the written stuff, and do that, you can learn to speak without any accent, because you simply learn to reproduce the sound. And that's what that's how a baby learns language. You know, you just simply expose it to us and the brain says, ah, got it, mama. You know, okay, where's your elbow? You know, my elbow. You know, it's just like we're taught and conditioned, you know, the language, but we do that. But you can learn any language in doing it that way.
Ben,
Yes.
so kind of from the backwards position, we hear sometimes that, like from the Christian tradition, that the Lord's Prayer could be used as a mantra, or
Yes.
the priest might say, go say 3 Our Fathers and 2 Hail Marys, or something like that. And
Right.
those can be used as mantras,
Yes.
sort of as in a meditative way.
Correct.
Okay. Now, do those have any, because they're in English, do those have any benefit to the chakras, or?
Yeah, they do, and you know they impact it in different ways. And there's more of the tradition, and I think what I've seen with the English version, and you know, and like the Lord's Prayer and things like that, is it does have an effect. And anything that literally millions of people have done over and over, and they make a pattern, they build an energy field that's kind of like a vessel for that mantra, or for that particular thought or concept. And it has a cultural component to it. You know, it's like the whole world may know that and may say it. And when you hear just the first few bars of it, or first, you know, few lines of it, you know what it is. And it's fascinating that how the mind, or even the AI, you know, the artificial intelligence, like these tools that will listen to a song, like Shazam was one of the companies, and somebody bought it, but you know, it can have like 3 or 4 bars of a song, and it immediately knows what the song is out of millions of songs. Well, that's how the mind works, and how the ear works, you know, and that's why hearing is in some sense so critical, is because we have that ability within our own being that we can do it. But once you start doing it, if it's something that's done over and over, it creates a repetitive pattern in the mind. And it can, if it's done over and over and has a great deal of devotion to it, like the Lord's Prayer or any of the religious traditions, it builds a tremendous energy within the being. And you get into like I've been in several churches, and ironically, many of them are Catholic churches, because they're built acoustically in a way to amplify and promote the sound, but to make it really beautifully. And and you go in and you just sit there, and if a priest has a pure heart and can express that through his love of God, through his voice and the divine, and through his singing, it can uplift everybody. And I know I was in one church that was an Assembly of God church here in San Jose that my daughter wanted to go to, and the person that was leading the music, their voice was so beautiful and their devotion was so clear that it just brought tears to my eyes. You know, it just opened my heart. And there's ways to do it with all the languages. It's just, you know, some of the languages, like Sanskrit, is a little more particular to chakras. So if you want to get, you know, some very specific actions in some way, or you have some problem, you have a great deal of anger or resentment, or some issue that you can't deal with in another way, even going to therapy, it may not help. In Buddhism, they have a remediation. You know, it's just like, oh, if you got this problem, this and this, oh, do this, 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 and this, say this mantra, take these medications, you know, and then do, instead of Hail Marys, they'll do prostrations to the Buddha. And, you know, and if you've really been bad, maybe it's 500,000 prostrations. You know, it'd be easier to do 100,000 mantra, you know. But yeah, the language can be very beautiful, and if it's done with great devotion, any language, you know, you go into that presence in that church, that place of worship, and you will sense that calmness, that oneness, that presence, that stillness that becomes one with God.
That's very true, especially with this Sanskrit, as you said, because it was designed to have a direct spiritual effect.
Yes.
On the other hand, take Latin or Greek, for instance, which I know better. It was
Right.
designed to appeal to beauty and attract your mind. So
Right.
when the Byzantines and the Christians started creating chanting for the Greek Orthodox hymnology, they resorted to the Byzantine music, which, if you have heard any, it's very prevalent in the background, the sound of the C note, the Om
Yes.
note.
Right.
So they combine both the language and the music to create the same effect.
Yes. Yeah, and there's lots of ways to do it, for sure. And I have played enough with Greek that, it has some very interesting properties also.
Yeah, it does. Some of it was lost in the process, though, in
Yeah.
the history.
Right. Any other questions?
I'll say something about it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Is it terrible with my speaker on? The sound? I think I've already said this before, but somehow it's just a different way of saying the same thing, I think. But it's an experiential thing with the chanting that I find when I really get immersed in it, that it just is a different way of saying that it has its own life in a way. It's like instead of your chanting to it becomes it's chanting for you. You lose in it completely. And I think that is something about the Sanskrit. It's like it has a loka or something. It's like it just pulls you into that place.
No, I agree with you, and I think any mantra or any prayer, anything that's been done by millions of people, millions of times, it creates a vessel. I just call it a vessel that has that power and that feeling, and it's just like you can drink from that vessel, and it can fill you up with that fullness, that wholeness, that completeness. But I think it's clearly there, and it's just I consider it a tool that can be used, and it's one that works very easily, for a simple guy that grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. It works. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Oh, that's like a comment.
Okay. One of the pictures of Audley that you showed us, the orange robe had been whited out.
Yes.
Why is that?
I have no idea. No, I was told that particular version, I do know. I was told that that at some point there was a break between the Hindu traditions and the more of the Christ center tradition that was moving forward, and they had found that the association with some of the orange colors from the robes of the swamis in India was not acceptable, and so people whited it out. And then I had some people do white ones, purple ones, black ones, all kinds of things. And the one thing I consistently found is that people don't like Audley in a black robe, which I thought was interesting because I had memories of him many lifetimes, and in a black robe. But that's just like everybody has their own preference, and clearly maybe he spent too many lifetimes in a black robe, and when he got here this time, it was like, let's put on the colors, and
That's
it had
for
a big
sure.
effect, on me. I ended up wearing, pink shirts and yellow shirts and red shirts and orange shirts and, any color, just like, let's be alive, let's have fun.
Yep.
But that's what I've been told. And I think there's probably some truth in that, some people didn't like the association with, in particular, Swami Muktananda, because they had heard he had done things that gurus shouldn't do with young girls or something like that.
Well, I remember Billy saying that Audley had told him that he didn't want to be in orange anymore.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
He never told me, but it's like he told everybody something different. Well,
this was after Audley
the
had-
world of Audley is that he
This
told
is-
everybody something different.
Well, this was after Audley had died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because in many of the religions that the priests are using black outfits, the reason is that color helps them keep the influences of the physical world out of their being.
Yes. And the orange is sometimes used to create the view of fire, the flame that cleanses the being. There's a story about each one of them, and I think they're all true.
Since you're studying Sanskrit, I just discovered something lately.
Yes.
All my life, I thought that guru is a translation for teacher. It's Sanskrit for teacher. What's your explanation of the word guru?
Oh, that's a good question. Sounds like a trick question.
It is a good. I found out that the true explanation, the true translation from Sanskrit is the eliminator of darkness.
Yes.
And I was surprised.
Yeah, no, I've seen it translated as way shower, as light bearer, as elimination of darkness. There's many ways to do it, and like all languages, there's, depending on the often the marking on the word, and or the emphasis and where it's applied in the tone and the root structure, it may have slight different meanings. And we do the same in English. We'll have a lot of ways that we can describe something in a more flowery or a more devoted or a more loving or a more gentle way, a more endearing way, and the languages are very rich in that sense. But it is removing the darkness, and removing the negativity is the way I think the Buddhist tradition typically translated it.
I see. Well, Ben, thank you very much. That was great.
Well, thank you.
You worked overtime today.
Okay, I'm going to say one thing just because it's important. It may not be to anybody else, but I've been to other traditions and teachers who were really good, and many of them seem to have a real preference for specific certain chanting and mantra, and they sometimes are very dismissive about some of the more fun kind of modern versions of music. But my own personal experience has been that it's really been fun too. Perhaps it's not quite as good for a very deep meditation, but there's something about it in a tantric way that is just as wonderful and has the value too. Yeah. And it's not so sober and you don't want to, you're not taking yourself as seriously.
Yeah, you mean like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream? No.
MC Yogi, have you ever listened to him?
Yes.
He's fun. It's just fun.
Right.
So, that's the kind of thing. I just think that's perhaps part of what oddly infused in me, because he did love fun. That, embrace a lot of other different things. It doesn't have to be just so.
Yeah.
That's part of
Tantra,
I guess.
That for me, that was his clearest, and probably the most powerful teaching of all, was that you can enjoy life, you can have fun, and yet at the same time you can touch the divine. So, what else is there?
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thanks. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.